Hey guys, reviewing while driving, coming back at you. We are talking now about episode 10 of season 6. We're doing the review preview here. We're going to be talking about the winds of winter. Really excited about this episode, not just because it's the finale, but because I think that more than other seasons, they're in a position to really advance a lot of the characters that are not just the major characters, but like all the characters that are involved on the show. And so I want to get into the breakdown of the trailer. And it's a pretty short trailer. I mean, it came at the end of the Battle of the Bastards episode, and I think it's only like 25 seconds, but it is packed. I mean, it is loaded with content. I mean, I made a list of all the stuff that they get into, and I kind of wanted to do the breakdown in order because I thought that they really conveyed just the scope of what they're trying to get to in the finale. And I mean, no wonder it's going to be an extended episode, right? Because of all the content that they showed, and that's not even counting the stuff that they didn't show, which we'll get into briefly. And I don't anticipate this being a half-hour video. This should be a relatively quick one. But so the first thing we see is King's Landing, and they flip between the main players there. You got Cersei, Tommen, it looks like Marjorie, the High Sparrow, and also Loras. And so it's the trial of Cersei is the single biggest unresolved plot element from this season. And so the entire conflict between Cersei and the Tyrells and the High Sparrow, and sort of that power struggle, not just between Cersei and the other side, but also the internal struggle between Marjorie and the High Sparrow, and who's controlling Tommen, the battle for the puppet, right? I mean, that's really what that's about. So I think that is going to dominate most of the finale, or at least a good part of it. I mean, I think at least 20-25 minutes, or if they decide to go full nuclear with the wildfire theories about the Mad Queen theories that are out there, if they decide to go that way with it, I think that storyline could absorb a good 40 minutes plus of the episode. And if they do go there, then they should. I mean, they should take that long with it. And they touch back, I think, on that storyline later in the preview, which we'll come back to. And then the next thing you see is a white bird flying over the north. It's flying over snow, and it's heading to Winterfell. Now, it's not a raven, so it's not a blackbird like, say, coming from the Wall to communicate with Winterfell. I really think that is Bran. I think that's Bran warging into something, like a white owl of some sort. I think that's Bran going to Winterfell, and I think it's him communicating or launching that communication with Jon Snow. Now, we know from, I think it's IMDb or one of those sites, that young Ned Stark makes an appearance in episode 10. So I think we're going to have a Tower of Joy flashback finale, right, where we finally get the R plus L equals J confirmation or denial or whatever it is. But and so I think then that will be the impetus for Jon and Bran to reconnect through that, whether it's the Bran warging through the white owl or whatever bird that is, or, I'm not sure, or whether my other theory was that Howland Reed would come up and just tell Jon. And so I can see that tying back in with what I mentioned in my last video about Rickon's death and them going in the crypt, and how that's a connection back to the crypt with Lyanna and even with Robert and with Ned. And so I think that white bird going to Winterfell is a sign that we're going to get Bran-Jon communication, and the whole issue of his heritage is going to come up. The other part of that scene was Jon interacting with Sansa. And I think it's them coming to terms with the ending of the Battle of the Bastards, where the Knights of the Vale roll up. Now, Jon obviously was surprised. I mean, I'm sure he was very pleased, that, hey, here's 1,000 or 1,500 heavy cavalry coming to save your butt. So I'm sure he's grateful, but I'm sure he's also like, well, why didn't you tell me? And so that's like, hey, we have to trust each other. There's so many enemies. And I'm not really sure what her reason was for not including him on the Baelish decision, other than she thought he might have just been stubborn and ruled it out. But she didn't even give him the chance, or maybe he was just proud and thinking, well, we can get the other northern houses, or we'll just go with what we got. Well, if they had gone with what they had, then they would have all been killed. So, I mean, Sansa made the right call. We'll have to figure out, what the price was for that, and that's actually touched on the preview too. So that whole idea of them coming together and being part of, a team, and I think him, if we can get to the Tower of Joy stuff, and if Sansa becomes aware of that, then Jon's even less of a threat to her, power than before, right? Because he's not even Ned's son at that point. I mean, if he is really the child of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, then he's like in line, like way behind all the other Starks, including Benjen, right? So I think that in a weird way, R plus L equals J kind of would help solidify the Sansa and Jon relationship by getting rid of any, mistrust or power play type issues. And Bran can also be a part of that by saying, hey, I don't want it either. I'm busy being the three-eyed raven. Sansa, you got this. So anyway, then they cut to a really creepy scene that is a throwback to season 2 and the Red Wedding, right? So we're back in the Twins, in Walder Frey's seedy, great hall, where he's there holding court, and all of his sons in their ridiculous leather headgear. And here's Jaime Lannister, right? I mean, he's the lion. He's there, kind of drug into this dinner scene with Walder Frey. I mean, that's a bizarre little dinner date. Talk about an odd couple, Walder and Jaime. I mean, it's just bizarre. And so he's toasting them, and he gives the line, Walder does, of send our regards from the Freys and the Lannisters. Well, that's a direct callback to the Red Wedding, and it's actually what Roose Bolton said to Robb when he killed him at the Red Wedding. Okay, so that could mean several things. That could be a screw you, from Walder and I guess Jaime to the Starks, like, well, hey, good job there, but, we're still sitting pretty here. Or it could be oh, so sorry that you died, Roose and Ramsay, but, the Freys and the Lannisters send their regards. That's what you get for screwing us and allowing Ramsay to marry Sansa, So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of which way that goes, and whether, the Riverlands are going to be deployed against Team Stark or not. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm also kind of surprised, because that puts Jaime in the Riverlands, and even further up in the neck, where the Twins are, which is pretty close to the north. So because remember in episode 8 in River Run, he was saying, hey, I just want to get back to Cersei. Well, he's nowhere near King's Landing. He's going the wrong way. He's going north instead of east. So I think that just reinforces that he's not going to be there to help Cersei, whether it's, his presence or fighting or giving her good advice, or like, hey, we got to get out of here. I think that this just enhances Cersei's isolation. I think Cersei's in real trouble in this next episode, because her biggest fan and supporter, and the person who's the least irrational of all of her surrounding people, he's gone. He's not there, and I'm sure he's like, man, can I get out of here, Walder? I got to be somewhere, and I'm afraid when he gets back, there's not going to be much left. Then we cut to the Godswood in Winterfell, and that's a great setting, and we haven't been back to the Godswood in a long time. If I recall, that place has been used in at least 2 or 3 other scenes. Some go back to season 1 when Ned is talking to Kat there. There's also a scene, that's where Maester Luwin, who was killed by Theon, that's where he goes and is found dying. And so it's this very spiritual place. So I think it's cool that they brought that back. And here's where we find out what Littlefinger gets, or what he wanted for coming here with the Knights of the Vale. So it looks like Sansa's kind of led him on, like, hey, come on over and help me. And he's like, well, what do you think I want? I came here for you. And so I think my prediction was right, that I think that Baelish is expecting that he's going to get to marry Sansa out of this. And, right, I mean, that's, from his perspective, that's the only way he's going to gain power is by marrying. He got that relationship with, with the Vale by marrying Lord Aaron's wife. Is it Lysa? I'm sorry, I forgot her name. The one who got shoved out the moon door. Yeah. So, that's why he came, was because this is his pathway to being the Warden of the North. Now, the bigger issue there, really, I'm actually kind of in a weird way not totally opposed to that because I think he's a smart guy, but I don't see how that would work with Jon. I mean, Baelish would want Jon out of the picture like ASAP. I can't imagine Baelish being really terribly interested in the whole White Walker thing. I mean, he's interested in personal power and taking the Iron Throne. So I'm not sure if Sansa's going to, reject him or accept him as part of this deal, or if they're going to become implacable enemies simply because, she lied to him to get him up there to help out with the battle. So I think that'll be very tense. But it was a beautiful scene with the Godswood in the snow, and just very pretty, her red hair against the blood red petals of the Godswood. A very beautiful looking scene. I can't wait to see that. Then we have Davos versus Melisandre. I know what you did. Tell him what you did to her. That is so tense. I can't wait for that confrontation. And it's all going to be about Shireen. I think Davos is going to come clean about Renly's death and him helping Melisandre do that with the little shadow demon baby thing that from the King's Blood of Stannis. I think all that's going to come out, and I don't think Jon's going to want anything to do with her. To be honest, I don't see him killing her, but I can see Melisandre being cast out and kind of being this, kind of free agent. I mean, she's still going to support Jon because he's, so far he still looks like he's Azor Ahai, right? So I don't see her bailing on that. I mean, that's her whole reason for living is to fulfill this prophecy. But I can't see Jon killing her or allowing Davos to kill her, but I can see her being exiled. We then cut back to a scene between Dany and Daario, and it looks like she's given Daario the heave-ho. I'm not sure why exactly. I mean, he's never been a big favorite of mine, but it looks like she's, saying, hey, look, we're going over to Westeros, and, Tyrion's my right-hand guy, and I've got advisors, and yeah, you need to go ahead and be the commander of the Second Sons, and you can help with the Dothraki, but, you're not going to be my king. I'm not going to marry you. We knocked boots once or twice, but that's it, So I think he's getting the friend zone treatment, which is kind of ironic, given how much shit he was giving, Jorah about that. So it looks like she's saying, hey, love you, but let's just be friends. Sorry, Daario. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know. Then we get a very interesting scene. There's a quick shot of Bran, and then there's this, we get the backlit view of a person with short hair. It's a man with short hair, kind of leaving this darkened doorway and going into the city with steps going down. And it's a slender, younger male-looking person. So it looks to me like that is Loras, who is leaving the sept of the Baelor. That's what that looks to me like. He's going outside to where those steps are going down. We saw that a lot this season, both when the Tyrells and Jaime marched up to get Marjorie back. We saw it last season with the Walk of Shame with Cersei, right? So I think that's who that is and where that is, but I wasn't sure. I mean, it could have been Tommen, but he doesn't have a crown, so that was confusing. I think it was Loras. I guess it could also theoretically be Lancel, in the Faith Militant, former Lancel Lannister. But I think that's the only person that could really be. So that then suggests that Loras is freed. And so that then suggests that Marjorie has made some kind of a deal with the High Septon to get his release. And so then the issue remains, if the Tyrells are calling the shots in conjunction with the High Sparrow, then I think Cersei's in real trouble, and I think that makes the Mad Queen scenario more likely. Then we get to the sort of the final scene, which is the scene between Dany and Tyrion. And I'm really interested in this one because it's short, but it's basically saying, okay, Dany, you think you've been, this great conqueror, and, you've been gathering your forces, but let me set you straight. You're about to jump into the great game, and it's terrifying. And so the political part of it, the idea that she just can't go to Westeros and kill everyone, even with all their ships and the Dothraki and the Three Dragons and the Second Sons and the Unsullied, that's a nice force, but she's essentially equivalent to one of the other noble houses, maybe two of them. I mean, she's got a large force, but it's not like more than everybody else combined. It is a substantial force, but she's going to have to win hearts and minds, right? I mean, she's going to have to win politically too, not just militarily. And I thought that was a great scene, not just in the preview, but in the last episode, about Tyrion reminding her that there's this, we're trying to make the world a better place. We're not like our twisted fathers. All of us had these, the old way, and now I heard another review about the old way versus new way. I think that's right on. It was Emergency Awesome. I thought that was a great point, that there's this sort of change coming, and that she's going to have to show up with force and with speaking softly but having the big stick. And I think she's been such a big stick person, and a little bit of the a little crazy there with the Targaryen stuff. And so Tyrion's sort of tapping the brakes, saying, hey, this is really involved, and you better be ready, Dany. So very excited. And what's funny is they didn't even show a lot of the stuff they still have to resolve, right? I mean, I'm sure we'll get an extended teaser trailer later in the week, but nothing in there about the Hound and the Brotherhood without banners. Nothing there about Arya, how she gets back, if she gets back. I'm sure she will. Nothing in there also about Jorah. I mean, he's not a major character, but I think we'd like to know kind of what happens to him. I hope he's not completely shoved out the door. And also the rest of the Tyrells and the Greyjoys. I mean, there's really, and I don't know whether they're going to do any of the book stuff with the Greyjoys and the Tyrells, but that is kind of out there too. We need to check in with Euron. Okay, how's your 1,000-ship fleet looking, buddy? Where's he with that? Dany's now aligned herself with his sworn enemies, his niece and his nephew, and what's going to happen. So I'm really excited about the episode coming up. I do think that episode 9, the Battle of the Bastards, really resolves stuff very well. I think, I still have some issues overall with the showrunners' storytelling and plotting, but in terms of the how they've set up the end of the season. I appreciate that on the big picture stuff. I would like them to clean up some of the small picture stuff, you know, what they choose to show and not show. But overall, very excited, looking forward to it. Tell me your comments and thoughts.